say that.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Not Another Tooling podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my wonderful co-host, Mr. Matt Malcolm Brown. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good. I'm just going to do a pre-warning that for some reason the school decided to not send the kids, and I have several kids going crazy in the house. So if you hear some audible tones, maybe I might disappear off camera to deal with some stuff. It's probably because of that. All right.
Yeah, no problem at all. And we have a wonderful special guest today. Welcome to the podcast, Maxime.
Thank you.
It is our first podcast of 2026 today. So happy New Year to all of our listeners and watchers. And hopefully both of you managed to get a good break, did you, over the Christmas period?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, good enough for me. I got 3 birthdays over the break at the same time, so bit of birthday, bit of stuff.
Yeah.
It is my birthday between Christmas and New Year.
Oh, is it?
And it's the worst time to have a birthday. So yeah, nobody cares, you know. But it's fine because I'm older now, so I don't care either. I'm like, good.
When you were younger, did you have like combined presents, or were the presents separated? Was it a Christmas and birthday?
Yeah, Christmas and birthday. It was horrible. Yeah, very, very disappointing. Yeah. Anyway, Maxime, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do today.
Okay, thank you, Austin. So I'm Maxime Saporta. I've got about 20 years of experience in leading professional services, started as a consultant, moving into director roles. I've been exploring the service management industry for many years, and I've been building operational teams during that time. What I would say is, like, I'm not claiming that I'm the ultimate expert technology-wise or in ESM. However, I'm a leader that is very keen on removing digital friction. And that's something that I've done since I was a consultant and into leadership roles. At the moment, I'm leading the IT service delivery team for Oxford Nanopore Technologies, and I've worked across 3 different continents, from France, Switzerland, and UK now. For me, I think for today, what is important is that I really believe that many organizations have managed to digitize their silos, but they haven't managed to break those walls. And this is where I am a big fan and advocate of enterprise service management, because I think this is really what makes a connective tissue between all those departments and make it more efficient. And this is the only way, not the only way, but one of the best way to get HR, tech, IT, facilities to speak the same language.
Absolutely wonderful. Is that, so you talked there about removing digital friction.
Yes.
So what do you mean by that?
I mean, it's like understanding that different parts of the business talk maybe about the same thing but differently, and therefore what's happening is like an incident, a ticket, a problem, or what is really the type of values that each department is expecting from a service could be slightly different, and therefore it creates a digital friction within the company where one good example is, you come in, as new CIO joins the company, says we need to put a new tool that will do enterprise service management across the board. But then they haven't solved, the way internally before, how we're going to talk between each other, and understanding that there are those differences of view and viewpoint in terms of implementing values with the service management.
Yeah, Absolutely, completely agree with that. I'm working with an organisation right now who've got 3 different ESM tools.
Really?
Even,
Wow.
and even in the one who's got the biggest part, they all speak different languages because they've got
Yeah.
different departments, and some of them can't relate at all to the other ones,
Yeah.
because they do very, very different things. It's manufacturing, so you've got like a sales organization, and then you've got, you know, people who are making stuff, and then you've got people who are supporting stuff, and, you know, and all this. It's very different. It's very difficult to bring them together, which ends up being part of my job, really. But
Mm.
so let's just talk about enterprise service management for a second. And, you know, years ago, if you'd have said that phrase, somebody would have said, "Oh, you mean help desk?" What does enterprise service management mean today, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's really the opposite of that. It's not to manage tickets. It's really, again, I come back to remove digital friction. So the idea behind enterprise service management is maybe more to define the framework within an organization or a business to help them apply like a common way of thinking of delivering service internally or externally in a global way. So having like a common language and connecting all those dots between the various different departments. So if you take a very standard GML process or a new starter, there's always many departments involved between IT, HR, legal, and all of that needs to be seamless. The end user or the new joiner doesn't care where things are going. He wants it to be smooth. And then on another level, a CIO or a COO would like to know, what is really my velocity to value? How quickly are those people being onboarded within my company? Or how much time are we losing? And therefore, potentially, those people are not straight into their jobs. They had to wait a couple of weeks to be all given all the access to the various different applications. So that's kind of that. And that's why I was looking at enterprise service management as the operating system for the company, for the business. It's like if you make a parallel, you've got the hardware are the people and the department. The applications are the various ones that we are using. It could be like Workday, ServiceNow, Salesforce, and the ESM is like connecting all those elements and making it talk to each other.
You said a really interesting thing that I just want to dive into for a second, which is you said we can look at something like an onboarding process and work out how we can make it quicker and things like that. And when you're talking about, you know, a common way of thinking and delivering service and language, a common unit of measurement of success and improvement, I think is another huge thing there, right? That is missing in most organizations.
Agree. Yeah, absolutely. In norms and what I've seen, all in my career, we measure time to closure, time to resolution, or time to, you've got a service request for a new starter and we close that many per year. So it's almost like a quantity over a quality. And the ESM practice and the way it changed fundamentally the thinking is to think of the time to value. So how quickly are we arriving there? It speaks a better business language as well when you convert it like this. So hopefully that should bring on board other people. And the one thing I would say is like there's also that elements that people are still thinking sometimes that ESM is just ITSM applied to HR. So it's like you take the existing way of doing and you just expand, the tool or the processes that you have. But if you do that, it won't really work. What you need is to adapt it and to change the language and the way you measure and finding commonalities between the departments to really bring them together. that's where I see is the magic of ESM.
There's a timely sort of comment. I guess coming up on ours as LinkedIn user, but it's actually John Worthington, and he's put a comment there with a winky face. But it's sounds like a unified service management system, which I've been doing some research into myself, and I understand the reusability of processes, and I think you're right that commonality that's the sticking point. Because Austin, your point earlier on around your organisation's got 3 different activities, 3 different tools. It could be one tool, it could be the same tool, but different ways of working. I think fundamentally ESM is a ways of working proposition rather than an outright technology, and that might be the target we're all heading towards, rowing in the same direction, the KPIs, etc. But the unit of measure all the same. But USM, because I've been doing a bit of research into it, is that commonality of making sure we've got not to reuse a word, but a unified way of working, which ultimately would underpin an ESM position either way.
Yes. Yeah, and I know, USM is a very easy, simple way of applying that across the board, and they kind of make it as simple as possible. And I think it works quite well. And ESM could be an additional layer on top of it. And so it's different. It's using a framework that will work for you within your company. But it's definitely the idea behind. It's like what we are seeing on the market. It's like there are many providers that are pushing the tools, saying we've got ESM capabilities, and it's almost like what we had in the past with ITSM, 20 years ago. It's like you buy the tool and it works, but it's not the case. As we know, ITIL came, everybody was trained, and that was the same idea. It's like in ITIL, it was creating a common language. It was a framework. It was not meant to be followed by the book. It was meant to be adapted based on the business, and then you should select the tool afterwards, and that should be the same principle on ESM.
So you talked about that organizations have digitized in silos, essentially. Do you think there are any other challenges that organizations are facing that is stopping them from moving to this kind of model?
Yeah, but I will double down on the silos, but there's a bit like you will have to deal with like the my way culture. So each silos will see things in their own ways. For example, it's very schematic, but HR loves emails, IT loves Slacks, and legal would love a Word document, to simplify it. But if you put it all together, they see things differently in various different angles, and they think that this is the best way to deal with, a service and to provide the service. So it's like you need to change completely the discussion and not talking about tickets or resolution. You need to talk about service value and what does it mean for each of those departments, and focusing on what is common here and not necessarily just the differences. Another challenge I see is the data swamp, because we'll have multiple tools, and if we want to start making them to communicate between them, we might have at some point an overload of data, and it's a typical garbage in, garbage out, where if we haven't done like a proper data cleaning, data analysis of all the various different repositories, you take a Workday, a Salesforce, and a ServiceNow they will have duplication. They will identify, for example, employee in different ways. And are you able to connect all of them, all those dots? If you're not able to do that, then your ESM tool will simply crash and give you like the wrong information. And I'm not even talking about adding an AI agent on top that will then generate the wrong information. And the last one is really common language. So I think it's coming back to basics and helping different departments talking the ESM language. And I think that's one of the biggest challenge in fact. It's like you might need to do a bit of training at the beginning. You might need to bring everybody to the table and explain, some of the core principle of what ESM should be. looking at the framework and then picking up what is important for your business and adapting it. So I think for me, that's 3 key challenges to really push things. It's nothing very exceptional if you take it, in terms of digital transformation. Any project like this would be kind of the same, but it's here even more. And the emphasis is even bigger because we try to talk to various different departments that have different mindsets and different ways of working for many, many, many years.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So who do you think should be owning enterprise service management in an organization?
In all honesty, it should be at the top level. It should be coming from the CIO or COO. This should be like really an element that drives that, at least in terms of the making sure that everybody is on board. And there would be certainly the IT department will have a good level of experience for having implementing IT service management, using IT principles, and so it could be one of these engine and leader to bring people to the table. However, they will have to be kind of trained to forget their IT language, to forget talking about just tickets and problems and change and seeing things in a different way, so that then they could be understood by HR, legal, facilities. So so that's how I see it. But if you don't have your top level on board, I think it's going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah, and Oh, I was going to be facetious then and say probably shouldn't be IT. The amount of horrendous ITSM implementations and dodgy service provision there is out there in IT. You'd be hoping somewhere else in the business is doing it better than IT, but maybe that's just the organisations I've worked with.
Yeah, well, you might be right, and it's true. There's nothing preventing. It's a very good point. It's true. I'm coming from an IT background, so I preach that element. But yes, it could be. I've seen brilliant things done in HR services, and where they had proper customer journey mapping, proper definition of what is the values they're trying to deliver internally, and in fact they were more mature than the IT service department, and then was trying to drive the ESM thing, and every time they were rejected because they were not at that level.
I've seen that, and this is my diagnosis, right or wrong. So from an IT standpoint, we already brought too much debt to the table. So when you see these other departments who just need to get on with stuff, they just get on with stuff because they're not bringing all of this stuff that we think is structure, governance, assurance, etc. Obviously, there's going to be some break point at some point, but where I'm seeing mature organizations who are just accelerating beyond the IT function, it's because they just haven't had to deal with this stuff we carry over and call it IT assurance and governance. And that's the separation for me, is people just get on with it without just go get it done, versus I'm going to be really structured and I need to make sure my process is in place. Largely, I see those being less mature, ironically.
It's a good point, Matt. And I think for me, ESM could be the door to open for IT to become more aware and more flexible, and to start thinking of value and velocity to value. And I think that could change that mindset. That's what I would encourage a lot of people, to look into it. And but you've got a very valid point.
We've got a question pop up.
Yeah, and it's all right. I was just going to lead into that because David brings up an interesting point then, because where do you go for budget for this, right? As you say, traditionally, IT have had ITSM budget, HR would have had their own budget for tools, different departments, all that. You're trying to bring this together, both from a tooling perspective, or certainly from a data perspective, but also from a kind of transformation program perspective, which may need other investment. So what's your experience there?
So, My experience has been more difficulties, so meaning it was not owned at the right level. So we were hitting a lot of friction trying to, implement those solutions. So yeah, it was like we had an IT budget that we were expanding, but then, no one in HR was really asked to, to participate, or they didn't have that budget. So if we look at it on a pragmatic approach, it should be the chief operating officer that should, because the key thing of ESM is to make the whole operation more smooth within a company. So for me, they should be owning that budget and helping it to be across the board, because you need time from people in all the departments. So that's your initial investment of time and money. And in order to get those individual budget after, you need to have that oversight budget. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting. So what's driving, or what should be driving people to change? I think a lot of organizations love this idea of ESM that you're talking about, but they are, as you say, digitally siloed today. So what are there any key events or projects or something where you go, actually, if you're doing that, that's the time to look at this on a wider level?
Yeah, a good question. Because there's multiple ways of going there, you could have multiple different triggers, but I think it's talking about pain points. It's like identifying if a specific department has recurring pain points. So, talking to your HR manager or talking to the facilities leader, is that what is the key thing that is really, you're losing sleep against, and trying to see if then that specific issue could be mapped on something, for example, IT has solved or HR has solved, and therefore you start finding that common discussion. So I think that there's no one trigger, I think, that we can identify. That would be a bit too simple, and maybe that's one of the issues why ESM is not, so broadly implemented everywhere. So it requires a bit of, lots of stakeholder management and going in and talking to various different people and spending a bit of time to map all of that. Yeah. So it's not a direct answer, but that's kind of the way I see it. Yeah.
It's really interesting that how many businesses don't do that, but should do. I've done a couple of big projects with manufacturing companies recently, and they're very good at looking after the number of screws in a warehouse that are going on an engine, and yet you phone up the help desk and they still have no idea what laptop you're running and what version of Windows it is and things like that. And I'm like, you've got the perfect processor for it there.
Yeah.
But you have, on something that cost you 20p, but this thing that cost you £1,000, you've got no idea about. So it's a really...
Isn't that though, because we're all in the IT space, isn't that systemic of the... I mean, we all work with some very big, complex, very well-known companies, and from the outside in, they look super well organised and clearly doing well in the market, and then you just peer behind the door and it's not so tidy. That's like a lot. And we all work with these different big companies. I've stopped being more surprised these days, but even so, some companies who are doing really, really well, actually functioning really well perceived in the market, good revenue, good profit. You go behind the scenes and look at things operationally, and it is not. I mean, there's probably loads of words I could use that sentence, but you get the gist.
Yeah. I totally agree. I had similar example at Austin. Is like a manufacturing company building big things, not to cite them, but flies. And it was the similar things. It's like you hope that they put all their money in building those engines really well, and which they were doing, but the IT department was really laid at the bottom of the pile. And I thought I would learn a lot about how to run projects fantastically, and the operational guides would be fantastic, but yeah, it was not the case. So yeah.
And just to play devil's
It's-
advocate briefly, because I know we're running low on time already, Austin. Just devil's advocate
Right.
briefly. We see those companies who are doing really, really well, and then we look from our perspective in our ivory tower that operationally it doesn't look so good. Well, who's right? They're doing well.
Yeah.
Are we going to introduce loads of debt and actually slow them down now? Are we as a function going to impact the operational viability? I don't know, but I've got to look at it objectively and ask the question because they're doing absolutely fine before we interrupt.
Yes, it's about, it's like change management 101. It's like, do you need to change things if it's working well? And why break things even if the company is doing well? And that's, the values they're providing to their consumer or customer or clients is there, and there's satisfaction. So it's a very good point. It's true that we could come too often with our blinkers like we can improve every time, but yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
you've decided you want to do something. You've had a chat as a CIO, let's say, with your counterparts in facilities and HR. You've gone to meet the COO and said, okay, we want to do this ESM thing properly. What are the top 3 most important things you should be considering or focusing on?
So the obvious one is that don't try to boil the ocean to start with. It's like thinking, I'm going to do HR, legal, facilities all at once, and put everybody around the table and push. And because, we know that it's not going to go as smoothly as you think, and you might end up doing like a 3-year strategic program and get nothing out of it. So I would focus to start small, select, one department that you've identified. I was talking earlier about the pain point. You've got a specific pain point on, the GML process that you can target immediately, and then they become kind of the champion within the company for the other departments. Say, look what we've just done between IT and HR. We could do the same for you facilities. Let's sit down now, and then you bring one more. So you expand like this. So the second one, I would say, is kind of going together, is really finding internally your willing coalition. So it's like, who are the key stakeholders within you will find people who already have that mindset of service mindset, and who wants, to do it, but they were stuck in some ways, or, BAU activities comes in and they don't have the time to think about it. So it's finding them and creating that kind of little group to push that. Very much, what you do in any digital transformation project, but here is like interdepartmental one would be a good one. So it's really reaching out to the people. And again, the third one is mapping the process first. So not choosing the tool straight away. And even if you have lots of pressure from, a lot of wonderful solution on the market, but if you don't try to create your process and you buy the tool, you might end up with like, the analogy I would take is like it's having a burger without the meat in the middle. So you just have the condiments and the bread, but you haven't got the main elements that combine everything and that makes a burger what is a burger, and would be a bit dry otherwise.
And there's a comment that so there's a quick one. There's a comment from Jan Bon Bon, and it comes to that point. He says, and if we leave ESM to the tool vendors, it gets more complex, messy, and expensive. And I think that power wagging the dog situation happens more often than not, where people are buying the thing actually before defining what's needed.
Yeah,
that seems to happen fairly commonly.
I know, but we know, and we've been there. ITSM is the same. Huh? We've always had that challenge where, being in experience of leading professional services or being a consultant, where you end up helping a customer who just bought the tool, but now they said, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
Help us figure it out to implement incident and change management. And quite often, sometimes down the line, this is the part that is tricky, is to realize that it was not really what suited to what your needs, and so you could have some weird conversation around. So, and I know it's a difficulties that you'll have. Who is purchasing, the procurement within the company? Yeah, so you could be in that situation. I'm trying to give hopefully an ideal view on how we should do it, but we know it's never the case. So I think there will be a lot of flexibilities that needs to happen within that, and sometimes it's to say, okay, but we've got the tool. It's not really the best for what we want to do, but let's still try to do it and come back with a framework. Yeah, that could work.
This is probably but the biggest bugbear of my life. I've worked for vendors for 25 years. Every time I get an RFP in, it has nothing to do with the organization and what they're trying to achieve and what they want to move the needle on, right? It's like a list of technical requirements that they have decided. And I'm like, what does your process look like that you're trying to improve? We don't know. How's the business going to be better? What are you trying to move the needle on? Profit, customer experience, revenue, whatever. We don't know, but we definitely need a tool that has this widget that blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, drives me insane. Anyway, so anyone thinking of putting out an RFP, please come and speak to me first. I'll give you some tips for free.
What I've started doing for requirements gathering now is I'll have the functional thing depending on how it's derived in the business, and then I'm also associating some business outcome. So the business outcome can be approached in a number of ways. We've asked about it for this way because that's how the conversation came up, but actually we need some business outcome. This is what the thing is. Obviously a bit generic in some cases, but the measurable aspect of it always gets missed. I thought where you were going to take that conversation then, Austin, was and we've definitely been in this scenario where the RFP has unfavorably been written, let's say. So the answer is already in the question, and a lot of people can't answer. Yeah, that's not uncommon.
Yes.
So let's not even talk about
that. Yeah. What I've seen and trying to circumvent that, and was exactly a bit like what you're alluding to, Austin and Matt, is like starting with like almost, okay, we've got the tool, it's been decided, but let's start with a workshop to talk. Let's forget about it and talk about the business requirements and what we are trying to achieve, and defining that first. Even if don't try to map it in the tool yet. Try to come back to basic in as such, and then after you dive in, because I've done it. The tool has been selected, and you map all your workshops around the tool, and sometimes then you arrive, go live, and 2 months after, it's not flying really well, and people are not really buying into the program, because in fact there was a disconnect between what was the initial requirements that people had envisaged 2 years ago before purchasing the tool, and then when you implement it. And ESM would be in the same thing, but those mistakes become even more costly with ESM. So I think that's critical.
It's a really, really good point, because there will be plenty of people out there who've been given a tool, or maybe they've just moved there and they've just inherited it, or whatever, the decision's made somewhere outside of them, whatever, and they've got to get on and do something with it. And like you say, starting with what does the business need, and hopefully you can make the tool do that, which most of them, you've got a fair chance of doing that these days. I think is a really good point. So we've just got a couple more points before we close up today, because I know we're talking a lot. So I'll and one of them is very relevant to the question that we've just had from Santosh So we're going to talk about the future of ESM, and in particular where we see AI being of use, beyond automating tickets. Do you see it actually orchestrating end-to-end workflows? and where do you see AI making the biggest productivity gains across different departments?
That's a few questions in one, but
yeah, it is
really interesting. And I think many of us are asking those questions, and including myself. I think the key thing is like there's a lot of promises going on, and we had chatbots, Gen AI, now it's agentic AI, everybody, so it's evolving so fast. But have we seen really, true application of it and the real return on investment? Not yet. So I think there's still an element that we need to watch that space. It's going to evolve very, very quickly. But the key thing, again, and we come back to the fundamentals that I was mentioning at the beginning, is like the data. So I think even before what AI can actually orchestrate can only work if you have created the proper map of your service value flow. And in order to do that, it's having an ESM framework and thinking of that first. So you've mapped that, then because no AI tool will be able to guess what are your business rules. You have to have it clearly defined how you're going to order all of that. And if it's not properly defined, then the data they're going to use is not going to work. What I'm seeing, and I think what I've heard and trying, is like people are talking about the zero touch, so it's like, for example, a GML process where no one is doing it. It's a bit scary in some aspect, because it's almost like saying that no one will be needed anymore, so we can remove a lot of people from the service desk who are doing those activities. I'm still more into the parties that think that AI should be an augmentation tool and helping to cut timing and make your time to value quicker. But I'm still seeing that the human touch will be key and essential, and I see it in the organization I'm working for at the moment. We, similarly, we develop tools that we sell to our customers, appliances, not tools, but in the life science industry. And you need a lot of human connection and communication. We're talking about R&D, lab development, and I don't think they'd be keen on having something that is entirely automated without human touch. So I think I reply a bit sideways, but the biggest productivity is to once you've got that mapping, is helping to your time to value quicker, and to automate some of those elements, like between HR, finance, and IT. That's what I'm hopeful for.
One quick one to add in. On a previous podcast, it was 2 or 3 podcasts ago, I think, Austin, we had Louis from Enably.
Okay.
He was talking about agentic AI, but he was talking about the stages of readiness and maturity of organizations. And the more mature organizations are actually starting to look at their operating models, and roles within those operating models are essentially cognitive functions, AI components, but a lot of it based upon the foundations. I forget the exact layers, Austin, that Louis referred to, but if anyone wants to go back and look at maturity readiness, he sort of layered it in on what would be sensible, because the topic of that conversation was enterprise orchestration, which is inherently associated to automation, etc. So it was a really, really good, layered, structured approach to assess readiness.
Yeah, and I think going back to a point you made earlier about the data swamp, right? The main problem organizations have got today is you're applying AI to a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get the results that you want, for sure. And that leads me on to my last kind of point or question, which is around training. Because I do think there's this whole narrative in the AI world at the moment that AI is the answer to everything, and you should be doing it. If your exec in your company isn't doing it, you're falling behind, and yada yada. Actually, most people don't even know what it is. They don't know what it can do and whatever. So they're not trained to be able to do anything. But in the ESM world, What do you see? What role do you see training playing today?
A massive one. So on both, if we're talking just about AI, I think it's, creating that common knowledge and awareness of what is AI, what is it not, and what it can do. One of my previous role at Pluralsight, where we were selling, online trainings, the Gen AI thing was one of the big one at the time. And and we saw it. It's like the companies were purchasing it. It was like to create, an AI dictionary that can be used across the various different departments, but also raising awareness at the top level of, what is really ongoing at the moment. So I think that would be a key one. Specific to ESM, I think it's coming back to that defining that common language. And there are not that many training on online at the moment, and that are specifically targeted for that. I've done one recently, and I'll be happy to share to the audience afterwards on the comments, where to go. And I think, it's like finding a training that is not like too IT oriented. I think that would be my recommendation. And but starting with that to really give, it could be the door opener, because sometimes it's quite good. And we've been there, when you go in, you work in professional services, sometimes you come in, you have good people internally in a company that could have done the work, but because they've been there for too many years, they don't have the same level of listening internally, and they bring someone external that will convey the same message. And the training could be used to convey that message, is to say, we want to explore enterprise service management. We want to make the operation smoother within the company. Please come in and, we will open the discussion through the training. And so I think that's an element that could work really well.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. And it's you just, because of those silos, people just don't, they've never met each other. They've never spoken to each other. Right? And so just bringing them together is a huge win, right?
Yeah.
And it was excellent, that trainings that I've attended for 2 days. That's where we had people from all various departments, and literally after a couple of hours, first workshop within the training, you had like multiple ideas, and people say, oh, I've got the same problems. I've been, trying to solve that so many years, and so on. And it's like all of a sudden, they all realize, we have similar ITs within, even if our departments do completely different things, we trying to sort out similar problems. And then you bring them together, and you even haven't started an ESM program transformation. It came from them, that the department are saying, we need budget, we need to do something, we need to push it. Maybe we can create a common project to try to sort out our problem together. And I was like, wow, that's really impressive. And I think that could be a great way to start there as well. Yeah.
I totally agree. Right, wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm just going to wrap up. Now, we have gone through so much today. I'm going to have to go re-listen to this because I'm not sure I've made enough notes, but it was absolute gold dust. Thank you very much, Maxime. So we started with the problem that companies have today, trying to remove digital friction. Different parts of the business speak different languages. ESM allows us to bring those things together. It's not about managing tickets. You're defining a framework and a common way of thinking, delivering service, a common language, and a common unit of measurement. Challenges that organizations are having is these silos. They have this my way culture, and For example, HR want everything on email, IT wants everything on Slack. You have this data swamp problem with multiple tools everywhere, and that garbage in creates garbage out, and that lack of a common language makes it really hard for everybody to work together, which is a common theme we've explored today. It should be owned by the COO, who should be owning the budget for this. And we talked about maybe IT being a starting point, but as Matt rightly pointed out, there's often too much debt in IT, and business want to just get on with it. The time to change is when you've found some recurring pain points, whether it doesn't have to be in IT, it can be in any business point or division. And then when you've decided you want to change, don't boil the ocean, start in the one place that has pain. 2, find a willing coalition of stakeholders that want to change the organisation. And then 3rd, map the process first. Don't buy your tool, otherwise you'll end up with a lovely burger but with no meat in the middle. And then we talked about what does the future look like, and particularly the role of AI, and you're seeing that more as an augmentation tool rather than a replacing people tool, and that very much you need to fix the data problem first before you apply AI to that. And then finally, we talked about the role of training and bringing in external companies to bring people together and get them talking a common language to move forward. Matt, have I missed anything?
No, pretty thorough. Especially we missed a couple of comments here, but I think we'll they'll be in the comments to read.
Yeah, absolutely, superb. Maxime, if people are inspired and want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
LinkedIn is, I'm pretty active there, and that's the best way to reach out to me. Yeah,
I definitely recommend everyone to follow Maxime on LinkedIn. He's a regular poster and some gold dust on that. So once again, thank you so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it, Maxime. That was superb. Matt, what have we got next in the diary for our wonderful
We haven't got anything
followers?
confirmed yet, but very, very soon. So as soon as we get it confirmed, we'll get the posts and the events pushed out. But we'll be aiming for at least one session in February.
I know some of those guests that are coming on, and they're very excited. So keep your eyes and ears peeled, and we shall have something up very soon. If you've got a topic that you would like us to cover specifically, or anybody that you think would be a great guest on the podcast, do reach out to Matt or I, and we would love to hear from you. So thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Maxime, once again. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.